It's so important to remember all the steps that it took to get us here. Yeah. My name is Aislinn, Aislinn Chloe. I'm the executive director of the Chicago Torture Justice Center, who Jen explained we opened our doors in 2017, and we continue to be the first and unfortunately the only center in the country dedicated to treating domestic torture. And that is by design. I, as an organizer with We Charge Genocide, when we were organizing to get the reparations ordinance out of committee and up to a vote, I didn't know that. Joey did know that, because Joey's much smarter than me. But I didn't know that by winning this, we would be creating the first and the only one in the country. There are about 15 to 16 other centers that do treat torture survivors, but they're contractually limited to only treating international torture survivors, which really serves the interests of this government, right? And so by creating a center that specifically speaks to and addresses domestic torture, it immediately calls into question what is it that this government is actually doing. And I say that because we exist within a historical continuum that made the center possible, that made the passing of the reparations ordinance possible, and that has made the breaking ground of the memorial possible. And that's from decades and decades and decades and decades and decades of survivors refusing to remain silent and refusing to remain invisible in the eyes of both the courts and the law and the public. And that took years and years and years and years. And if we're only looking at Jon Burge, and we know torture didn't begin and end with Burge, but if we're only looking at Jon Burge, that's a 50-year time span. That's 50 years of people like Anthony Holmes and moms like Marielle Johnson refusing to sit down when no one would listen, when no one would believe them, and when people actively told them that it was untrue. And those things didn't just happen because cops are bad. I mean, I'm not saying cops are bad. But they didn't just happen out of a vacuum, right? It was produced out of an existing system that is broader than just the police, because Jon Burge learned those tactics in Vietnam. That's where he learned those advanced interrogation techniques, AKA torture, and brought them to the civilian population here. And we're not so naive to assume that he was the only police officer who did that or who continues to do that. So that's why what's happening internationally and what has happened internationally is key for us to keep our eyes on. What's happening now and what happened then directly impacts us here. And they try to divide us. We have seen that time and time and time again. And they're really, really trying to do that now. But it was people like the ones that we've mentioned already, like Greg, like Anthony, like Michelle, like the so many of you who are here, like Ronnie Kitchen, who refused to remain silent and who said, despite everything, I am going to keep fighting. And that's what we need in this moment. That's how we were able to break ground and open political space where Rahm Emanuel felt forced to comply with our demands. And we were able to push out the old white guard who was in city council. And who did we get in? Alderwoman Jeanette Taylor. And this is significant because this was a result of millions of people. We had millions of people in the street in 2020. They were scared. We were able to push out people who had been in city council for decades. No one else would move on the memorial. Rahm, after the ordinance was passed, would never meet with us. Lori, even though she campaigned on it, would never meet with us. Brandon campaigned on it and met with us. But even more than that, the elders who were here refused to advance this. And I'm gonna name them because they're still in the political atmosphere now. Sophia King and Pat Dowell. So it took a huge movement to force Rahm Emanuel to pass the ordinance, to force the ousting of Anita Alvarez, to force these old guards who were regular established people in city council out so we could get new people like the amazing Alderwoman Jeanette Taylor, who then allowed us to move forward with the breaking ground. So all of these things are connected in this moment. We exist within the continuum. And I want to also just shout out another thing that's really important in this movement that also is directly connected to all those players that I mentioned, and especially Alderwoman Jeanette Taylor. It's the renaming of the playground where Ronald Johnson was murdered. Which is just a few blocks down. His life was taken by CPD in 2014. And Dorothy Holmes, his mother, who's here today, please raise your hand. Was just like the mothers that we just mentioned, who refused to remain silent because the expectation was and still is that when a violence like that happens, when the state commits harm, that you're supposed to feel like you can't do anything about it. And I know that's true because that happened when my best friend's brother was killed when I was 18 by the police. And me, an organizer whose father worked on the Chairman Fred Hampton campaign and was with him the day before he was assassinated, I didn't even think that we could organize. That's how deeply embedded that disempowerment was. And the movement changed that. And Dorothy said no. And we have stood by her for 10 years. This is going on the 11th year. And again, those same elders, when we went to them to ask them, would they rename this unnamed playground in honor of Ronnie Man, where he spilled his last, unfortunately, his blood and took his last breath? They said no, and those same elders, Sophia King, Pat Dowell. And it was Alderwoman Jeanette Taylor who forced this to be put up to a vote in the Park District. So our movement, folks, all of these things are intertwined, and they're so important for us to realize that every single fight is connected. That's right. And so when ICE is here kidnapping our people, and disappearing people and using very, very similar tactics that Jon Burge used, that's intentional. Yes. And we also have to turn up and be there for them because they are us too. And so while we're on the precipice of fascism, we're on perhaps the opening start of World War III. Yeah. We know that we have survived them, and we will continue to survive them. Yes. And the way we will do it is by remaining connected and seeing the humanity in each and every one of us. Our fights are connected, and by us knowing that deep down in our bones and in our blood and in our soul and in our spirit, that's how we will win. They will not win. They will not win. There are more of us than them, and they know it. So I want to thank you all for being here, and our work is not done. Yeah.